Hey, I'm Edric,
I'm Joy.
and we're here to help you.
Get it right from the start.
Okay, so if you caught the first one, this is the teaser reality. You're hearing it now. If you have not seen the first one, I suggest do that first. So take a breather, go back. It's going to be great because it's such a natural conversation of the sisters. It's like I'm watching them talk and then I'm inserting myself. So we're going to do that again. So honey, please introduce our guest again so people who might be just hearing this now get to know her again, and then let's go into the theme you want for this next part.
All right, so this is my youngest sister, and as I've shared in the previous podcast, she is pregnant with her seventh
pregnancy.
pregnancy, but she has 5 girls already, and she's going to be giving birth in the
And it's a surprise. We
2
don't
or 3
know the gender.
Yeah, we're not going to know until it's born. So we're just so happy to have her here. She was homeschooled previously, like I was, but for longer, and she is currently a doctor, musician, of course, wife and mother, and we'll get into that. But for this one, we're going to talk about, Carolyn, we want to know, and the audience, I think it would benefit them to know, what was the transition like from homeschooling then into conventional school? Because the first time you set foot into a classroom was
grade
literally
6.
the first time you ever experienced having a teacher and classmates, and that was in the 6th grade.
Yeah.
Oh, for the record, mom was the teacher. You guys were classmates,
did have,
technically,
like,
but
class.
A formal
structured, yes,
Sure.
environment.
That's a really good question. So you want to know how the transition was for me?
Yeah.
From being homeschooled to
Was there anything that
conventional school?
overwhelmed you? What shocked
Okay.
you? What was nice?
I think I will
Yeah.
premise it because before we entered, so my school was Faith Academy. Before I went to conventional school, I remember mom sharing two important things that I think really helped me. So a lot of people actually wonder about homeschoolers and socialization and like, okay, the academics is good, but are they socialized and well socialized? And we always say, like, with homeschooling, we are vertically socialized, right? Because mom and dad would take us around. We'd go to Bible studies so we could talk to adults, we could talk to kids, we could talk to grandparents. And that's the reality of real life. When you go to the office, you're not with the same age bracket, with the same gender or whatever. It's all different. So that was one. Secondly, when going to school, I remember mom sharing a principle that, when you go to school, you feel like you're the new kid. So sometimes you might feel self-conscious, but in reality, everybody's a new kid because they're new to you, you're new to them. So rather than waiting for people to come to you and introduce themselves, you go ahead and introduce yourself and be friendly. Be the kind of friend that you want to be and the kind of friend that you want other people to be to you first. So you don't have to wait for them to come to you. And so I think I took that to heart. And so going into middle school, maybe it came across weird to some of my friends. I don't know, but I would tend to just say, hey, my name is Carolyn. What's your name? So it wasn't like I was waiting for people to introduce themselves to me.
Hey, my name's Carol. I'm homeschooled, so I need to say hi to you.
Yeah.
No, she didn't do that. She didn't do that.
I do remember a couple of years later, though, one or two of my friends were like, we were kind of like shocked because you were like, hey, my name's. They were not prepared for it. It was kind of like, you're the new kid, but you're introducing yourself. It is fine. We all became friends eventually. So that was a second thing. And then I think the third thing too was, well, here's a funny story. In grade 6, they call out for, like class president and vice president and all these things you're going to run. You have elections. So I remember that there were elections and I came home and I told Mom, I think we're going to run for president. And she was like, thinking in her mind, like, you're the new kid. I'm like, what if you fail or what if you lose? But she didn't say that out loud. And then I think she quickly said, well, or I said it, I can't remember if it was her or me. She said, if if God wants me to win, I'll win. And if not, then he has something better for me. So that was always kind of my attitude, like, because they taught us growing up, and I think this is something I want to share to the audience as well. Not the concept of self-confidence, like be confident in who you are as a person, but the concept of God confidence. Like because of who God has made me to be, and he, Philippians says, I can do all things through Christ who
Mm.
gives me strength. So if I'm going to run for class president and he wants me to win, I'll win. And if he doesn't want me to win, then there's something else in store because I can do all things through Christ who
Yes.
gives me strength. So it was that combination of like God confidence in doing different activities and things like that. So the transition for me, thankfully, I didn't feel like it was that drastic. And I was able to make a lot of good friends early on. But I do believe there is also maybe a certain level of personality that comes into play because with Candy, she also is such a great connector
Did
and
you make class
socializer.
president?
Oh, yes, for the record, I did. By God's grace. So I was president in my first year. Um, and then, but Candy, I think, struggled a little bit more with I think because of maybe her, well, you should get her on the podcast too to talk about it. But she has so many friends because she's also very outgoing. But maybe sometimes what's happening internally can be different per student because of our personality um, differences or our thinking.
Mm.
One of the things, though, I've maybe struggled with throughout and have had to work on and work through is growing up. I was very, very self conscious. Like I was very self conscious. I thought people were always thinking about me and looking at me and having whatever.
I know why. Because during our family Bible studies,
You guys would laugh
but
at me.
not me,
You
our
make fun of
brothers.
me.
It was our brothers.
I witnessed that. For the record, I witnessed that.
They
I
would
was also
Stop it,
laughing.
it's
I was
true.
laughing at them, laughing at Carolyn, and
say,
Carolyn would start to get
she's gonna
teary
cry,
eyed.
she's
She's gonna cry,
Yeah.
and
So
she gets
I,
red
look, if I
eyed.
look like I'm crying, it's because I did cry earlier. I'm
trauma
very.
from that.
It's become a habit for her now.
There are some traumas that mom didn't even know of.
I
can
know,
share
that's why-
with our ates. Did you know that? By the way, that's why watch out for your ates. They would make fun of me every breakfast for like 3 years.
I did not
Sad.
know this. What would they do since you're sharing?
No, they would just like make comments about me, and so it would be me and Candy because we're the last ones to be homeschooled.
They would tease.
They would tease, and then they would get me to cry, and then I would just cry. I don't know if it was 3 years, but it felt like that as a kid, right? And
So they were almost egging you on to cry, like
they would
almost
make
that,
me
like,
cry,
"Oh,
like
let's get
in
her
the
to
morning.
cry."
And they would say different things like tease me about certain stuff or say stuff. So but I never told mom about it until years later, and she was so upset when she found out about it. She's like, "Why didn't you ever tell me?" I'm like, "I don't know."
But that's a good point.
That's a very good
Whoever
point.
you hire to help out with your family, you
Yeah.
also need to brief them that, these are, I'm a very
ground rules.
aware mother or father, and
Or maybe tell the kids too, like,
And
"Hey,
tell the
if
kids if they-
anybody tells you
good.
anything, says
Yeah.
anything, touches anything."
Yeah, the touch.
For sure.
We got that.
We've got-
Joy got that
that's
covered.
kinda-
But the say, that's really good.
Say.
Do you remember when I'd even play sad music and try to get
I did that to my sister. Just for the record, I also did the same thing. Oh my goodness, it's
Oh, you
so
would
funny.
tell stories too,
No,
right?
I
Like,
would-
imagine mom and dad like dying, flying up.
I would tell a story, or I would
Wait,
play
I did this to my
sad
sisters also.
music on the
Yes.
piano.
I tell a story, they'd be like, oh, and then I'd make them laugh. So I just flip, like,
Okay.
just see their emotions swing. That's anyway. So back to
Anyway,
Carolyn.
so
Now,
back.
Yes,
What
you're
I
saying.
was very self-conscious, but that is something I've had to work through and realize, you know what, at the end of the day, people don't really, I mean, they're not looking at you, they're thinking about themselves too. And so if you are just able to be the kind of person that you want others to be to you, then you can reach out to the people around you and you can be a blessing. I saw that a lot with mom too.
Yeah.
Okay, I know you want to say something, but I'll just
No, I'm going to ask a question, but
this.
you go
Okay.
ahead.
because I would witness how mom can draw a person out in like 10 minutes. And they would literally
5
share,
minutes.
like share
Maybe
their
1
life
minute.
story. They'd be crying already by the end of 10 minutes because they'll share with her every, whatever's going on. And
Feel
I
very safe.
always wondered, like, how does she do that? And what is it about her that people are so drawn to? And I realize it's because she's always thinking of the other person. She's not thinking about herself. And she will ask questions to draw people out versus maybe how I am or how I was growing up and can be is like I like to talk. I like to tell stories and share all these things. And so it's easy to just share, but you're not actually drawing people out. So I'm learning still.
You know, I want to kind of highlight something here because I growing up, I know you always stood by convictions. You were very particular about honoring God in your individual life. And one thing that, for those of you who have younger children who are maybe going into the teenage years, there were choices that you made. You even made a list. Can you tell people about that list that you made?
My list of what I'm looking for in a man, or
No,
what
not
list?
ever.
list
That-
of a
that-
My not now, not ever.
Not
Oh,
now, not
not
ever
list.
list.
Okay.
So say it again. It's a not.
No, so it was a not now, not ever list. Well, it was it was not triggered, but it was inspired, I should say, because of chapel in faith. So somebody shared in faith, and then they
Faith
encouraged-
Academy is the school we eventually went to after homeschooling.
Yes. So it's a missionary school, but it's like an international school. So they would have chapel once a week, and they would get different speakers to speak. So during one of those chapels, it was about, I don't even remember the topic, but it probably convictions. And then they encouraged us to write a not now, not ever list, which means you, before anything happens and before you're in a certain situation, you already know what your choice will be, because the premise there is usually if you don't know your convictions and you don't have a decision made when you're in that situation that's compromising, or it's temptation, you will tend to not make the right choice. So fair. So during that chapel, I remember I wrote it, or I don't know if I took it home and I wrote it. So I wrote it, not now, not ever. So for example, I did not want to engage in premarital sex. So I put, I will never engage in premarital sex before marriage, before marriage. I didn't want to have vices, and I didn't want to be a smoker and a drinker and a drug addict. So I said, I will not drink alcohol and smoke and do drugs. So just putting these convictions down so that when the time came, let's say in college or in high school, where friends would invite me out and there'd be a party and it's like there's alcohol and smoking, I could just be like, oh, thank you, I'll just have water. And I was fine with it because I knew where I stood for the Lord, right? Again, going back to my relationship with God, like I want to please God. I don't think these things please God, so I don't want to do it.
Right. Since you landed on that, Carolyn, did you ever feel pressured? So sure, you would state maybe at the start, hey, I'm okay with my water. Did you ever feel like, Carolyn, come on. Aren't you going to hang out with us? You're not cool. We don't like you. So speak to that.
Okay. The other thing I think that really, really helped is there's a verse in Colossians 2, verse 10 that says, in him I am complete. For some reason, that really held me together when it came to temptations and like trying to fit in. I didn't feel like I had to adapt to what the world was doing because I knew who I was in Christ. And a big factor too is I also knew the security I think I had with my family. When I went to college, I noticed that a lot of kids would just hang out for a long time at school and just be with their friends. And
That was
I
their
was
family,
And I always
Yeah.
wanted to go home. Like I love being home. And I wondered, why would people just, the bench culture at Ateneo. So why would people just hang out in these benches? Like there's so many things to do with your time rather than just sit there and converse. I mean, it's fun, and I think it dawned on me one day. I said, you know what? Maybe if a person doesn't come from a family that is safe and happy to be with, I would want to stay at school too and hang
Stay
out with my
outside.
friends.
Stay wherever I can be outside.
I just get out of the house. Like, why would I want to go home?
Mhm.
So I understood from that perspective. But so going back with writing that list, it really did help in terms of just having that very clear focus that I don't need to do these things to be accepted, because I know I'm accepted in Christ and in my family.
I want to ask a second question, which is related to that. You wrote another list, which has to do with the kind of person
Yes.
you would possibly marry someday.
Yes.
Right. So,
That when I
the
was
reason why
16.
I want to focus on this, because I think this is something that we can encourage all our young people,
Oh.
our children to do.
Yeah.
It's like when Daniel was taken to Babylon, and it says that he made up his mind not to be defiled.
Defiled. Yeah.
So he, like what you said, that you made up
Free
your
decision.
mind. Yeah, it's a
It's called a
pre-decision.
pre-decision.
for
Rochelle
the
calls it a
actual
pre-decision.
decision.
I like that.
And so there was another pre-decision that you made, which had to do with your
Relationship in the future if I ever got married.
because you did not date anybody
No.
in high school, not like me,
And nor in college.
nor in college. Yeah,
Yeah, it was
You stayed
SSB,
pure.
single since birth.
yeah. And so what were you thinking when you made that list?
So again, I mean, I'm sure it's also with the influence of mom and dad, like always encouraging us to keep our standards high and choose the right person for marriage because marriage will make or break you and all these things. Oh, and sorry, let me just, before I forget this thought, going back to the transition to school, another really important thing that mom and dad shared, which I remember going to college, is that your friends will make or break you.
Mm.
So choose your friends wisely because the friends that you hang out with will determine your trajectory because they will influence you for good or for bad. And in any true relationship, you will be changed. So if you have good friends, they will change you for the better. If you have bad friends, you'll be influenced. Anyway, going back to the list for the person that I would want to be with someday, I think I was 16 when I wrote it. And maybe again, encouraged by another chapel service or something. I don't remember exactly why I wrote it, but I wrote it because I wanted to have clarity as well if ever I dated. Mom and dad said we couldn't date till we were 16.
They
But
put an age. I did not know this.
they did.
Maybe for you.
That's a little young. I wouldn't actually.
My parents told me the
encourage that.
exact same
said
thing. I don't
15.
remember this.
Yeah.
Wow. So you don't remember
Oh,
Well, for sure, I was the first
Another one
to
to start
date,
at 16.
and that was at 16.
yeah, but
But
they did have kind of
But-
that age. But the thing was, we were so satisfied and busy doing our thing, studying and sports and music and all this stuff. We really didn't have the time to date. And there were guys that did like me in school at Faith, but I remember
A
having
lot
to
of guys
kind
that
of
liked you.
bust them in a way because I was like, I just don't have the time and the bandwidth. And you wrote about 5 freedoms of not dating, and I think those are really true. If you don't know about that, you should ask Joy about that. But so I wrote that list and I just kept it in my journal and didn't know if it was ever going to come to pass. But the list is more of a list of character qualities than it is like just physical qualities. So things like number 1, he must have a personal relationship with the Lord. He needs to love the Lord with all his heart, soul, mind, and strength. Somebody who is let's say an initiator or is hardworking, is somebody who's not gonna have to be dragged to doing service, like to have to serve the Lord. Because I was active serving God in youth and in ministry. So I was thinking, why would I want to marry somebody who'd be like, oh, I don't want to, like, can we go serve? But I did put a few side things there, like somebody who appreciates music. I didn't say he had to be a musician because I love music, and I thought if I'm playing the piano and then my husband's like, shh, shh, stop that. It'd be so sad.
It's good.
So, yeah.
No, but what I like about Carolyn and everyone that's listening here is preventively, right? Pre-decisions such as even who you will marry. I was also taught to have a needs and wants. This is the needs that you need to have and wants. But what I liked about Carolyn's version is character qualities.
It's more
That's
character
super
qualities.
important. So
Excuse me.
put that in there.
You have to need-
Of course, I had a needs wants list.
You never.
This is what I want. I remember I told
many
you my
years have you
mentor,
been married?
my mentor, Carolyn, when I was asking him about how did you make the decision, he opens up his wallet, he puts a note out, and he said, "These are my needs, my wants." He said, "You must have it." And he said, "I found it," because I knew his wife, right? I'm like, I did not know that. So I
So cool.
made that as
You
well.
you
So,
never talk to me
Nobody
about
needs
this.
to know what the needs and wants list is because that's been fulfilled, right?
Uh-huh.
So back to you, Carolyn. My
Well,
final
I
question.
also wrote
Yeah, go ahead.
a list of things I needed to improve on.
That's good.
Everybody knows that.
Oh, that's
So I
most
wrote,
people don't do that. They just think
Yeah.
of what they would like.
Want.
They would,
Yes.
but they don't.
but
talk
I
about
wrote
it.
a list that said, what do you need to change?
And were you
how
able
would
to
Well,
clear through all the list?
I don't think I've cleared it fully.
That's for life, I
I'm
think,
still
right?
every year when
The challenge
you're
for the-
like, what do you need to improve? I need to improve my prayer life. And then like 10 years later, it's still my prayer life.
Right.
Can
So-
you just take a photo of that and send it to me? I'm so
You
curious.
know what? I am actually
Do you have it
looking
still?
for that journal
There you go.
specifically because I have all my journals and that one journal with those both.
So like
both
sister,
listed
like
with-
sister,
But the
Probably your mom and dad's
but the
house.
Motivate book has my list
for what you
for,
want.
for what I wanted
There you go.
in my husband. And I'm like, oh, at least it's here.
It's you can have reference.
It's never
So
over.
so I I want to bring the conversation to close, but
Sure.
on the main point we started on, because we'll have
Transition.
another one, the transitions, right? I think for many people who are listening, part of their question is, so you went into regular school, you
Mm.
did well for yourself, as we've shared in the credentials. Tell us about in that season, how did you then know where you're going? So you're going to school, like what job, what career, what profession, what would you do? We heard a little bit about the relationship side, the needs and wants, but
Uh,
on a practical note, parents who are in this stage, whether they are homeschooling and transitioning their kids or not, there's a transition where the kids have to then figure out, what degree do I take? Where am I going to
yeah.
go? Give us some of the lenses on how you went through that process, and we'll
Yeah, I think
end there.
everybody's story is unique, right? But for me, as I gave my life to Jesus, I asked him to guide me. I wanted to follow him. So that's the kind of like the theoretical side, right? And then the
Foundation,
practical, the
yeah.
foundation or the underlying, and want to glorify him. But there are things that happen in my life that would also push me towards a certain direction. So, for example, if I thought about, oh, if somebody asked me, what do you want to be someday? I, I didn't know for sure if I was going to go into medicine, but there was a circumstance that kind of paved that way, and I'll share it really quickly because I know we have to end soon. I got very very sick when I was 12. So when I was 12, I had a really bad pain, and long and short, it was
I
a
remember
case of
this.
appendicitis. So the reason why we knew it was appendicitis was I was home, dad was home, mom wasn't home. I was in so much pain, and I really thought, I think this is appendicitis. So was it the Holy Spirit? Maybe. I picked up a medical book in our house because we had it, and I was researching it, and I read through it, and I said to dad, I think I have appendicitis. So from that, he took me to the clinic. Then the clinic said you have to go to the hospital, and then I had surgery because it was appendicitis. So it was kind of like, you diagnosed yourself at 12. You should be a doctor.
Mm,
So, those seeds are planted.
that's good.
Then when I was in middle school at grade 8, so I think now I was 13, when people would ask me, what do you want to be someday? I said, I want to be a doctor in China sharing the gospel. So it was very like, that's it. I was like, oh, I think I'll be a doctor because I couldn't imagine doing business. I couldn't imagine being a lawyer, all the major professions in life. So I was like, pilot, no. Lawyer, no. Businessman, no. So that was kind of just there. It's like, I think I'll be a doctor. Maybe I'll be a doctor. Okay. So then high school, just do your best, excel in whatever classes you can do in sports. And then in college, I actually applied for 2 different types of degrees in 2 different schools. In Ateneo, I applied for BS biology, and I think maybe I'm not sure if I did a management course. And then in UP, I did business accountancy and some BAA,
BAA.
that BAA course, and maybe biology. So thinking medicine. And so I got into biology at Ateneo, and I got into UP as well. And so I had to decide again, like, where am I going to go? What am I doing? That's a whole nother story. I won't go into that. It's another podcast. So I prayed, and God led me to Ateneo. But I didn't, I wasn't 100% on being a doctor. So I was like, what will I do if I graduate with a biology degree? Like, what is that? So there was the option to shift to psych before I even started. So the last possible day to request for a shift, I wrote an email to the school and I said, can I shift to be a psych? And they accepted my request. So that's how I got into psychology, which is a pre-med course, but it's also open for other options like HR, business, anything. So I think God really guides step by step. He's seldom early. He's never too late. I remember asking him specifically, Lord, please don't let me wait the entire time to choose where I'm going to go. But he let me wait the entire time plus an extra day because it was holiday before I actually made that decision. So I was like, God is just on time.
Right. And the involvement, I think the lens that we want to also close with is the parents.
Yeah.
Mom and dad in that transition and helping guide you towards that career, and that what did they
Yeah,
do,
with
or
mom
were
and
they not
dad,
really do anything and it was all between
they're
you and
very supportive. Like, if
God?
okay, you want to go into medicine and that's a pre-med course, that's a great
Mm,
option. You want to shift to BS psychology, I think that's a great option to give you more options after. So they were there, but they didn't say, hey, you need to do this or you must do this. It was kind of a joint conversation. I would have conversations with them because we were so open with mom and dad. So we could ask them for advice, ask them what they thought. And they did speak into that. I don't remember like all the details, but they did speak into that.
I think maybe as we wind this down and close it, we didn't get to talk about this part too much, but you were also a really great athlete. And so I think when we talk about the transition from homeschooling into conventional schooling, the decisions you made, but also what you got into, and even that you graduated so well, and you're a very well-rounded person. I was thinking that, and you didn't get to mention it in the previous podcast, but do you think it was Dad's influence that made you, all of us, interested in sports?
Yes, because
More so than Mom, I think.
yeah, Daddy was very intentional about introducing us to all sports. Bowling, ping pong, basketball. He built a court in our yard, right? I mean, kind of like a half court. He would allow us to do that. So he got us to do that. But Mom was instrumental in helping us have a good
Fitness.
endurance. She would make us run around our lot property, which is up and down 10 times. That's at least more than, I mean, it's 1,000 square meter house, and then you go around it. So what's the perimeter of that, right? It's and it's up and down, and she make us run.
It's 1,000 square meter perimeter.
No,
it's bigger.
that
Karen.
house.
The perimeter, if it's 1,000,
No,
that's
but
1 kilometer. That's 10 kilometers each time.
So we
that
would
is
just go
major.
around the house. We had to go around.
You
the
never
entire
want us
house.
sitting around doing that.
10
That's
times
for sure.
around every day. You'd run 10K every day.
No, it was
That's what I'm
every
hearing.
day, but no, it wasn't 10K. It was probably like I don't know how we just run.
But that's a long time. In other words, wow.
The entire perimeter of the house, right?
Mhm.
It's up and down. So that's what I believe. Really, thankfully, that gave us such good fitness. Like our endurance was really good
I see
in
that.
terms of
It's annoying.
sports. Okay,
Can't give
anyway.
it this whenever we play.
Yeah.
Yeah.
and then actually, for the record, I was not an athletically looking child.
You're not of the athletic build.
No.
Because you were heavier.
Yes.
Chubbier. I remember that.
Okay, this is something that I want to share because mom and dad never discouraged me from sports. But in their hearts, they did not think I would actually excel in sports because later on, daddy
How did you
told
figure
me.
this out?
Dad told me.
Mm.
Because remember, I went all the way to college and I played
That's right.
competitive.
Yes, yes.
And then we won the championship by God's grace. And then he said, I never thought you would go this far with sports. And I told Dad, thank you for never saying that. Because if
Correct,
you
correct.
said that, I would never.
That is super
excel.
important for all the
So
parents
please,
listening.
Don't label your kids. If they look a little clumsy or they look a little chubby,
You never know.
you never know. And don't ever say you can't do that. And they never also stopped me from playing sports and doing piano. And a lot of people I'm a pianist, right? Why are you going to play volleyball? You're going to destroy your fingers. It was never an
Basketball,
issue.
yeah.
Basketball
And in
too.
the same way, Carolyn, they never forced you. They're like, no, you have to do this sport. You have to do this.
No, they just
I know who
exposed
forced you.
sport.
Paul.
No, Paul trained us. He didn't force.
So just to make sure that's balanced that way also. Dad never forced you and said, Carolyn, you better do this. If not,
But they encouraged us if we
Can
did.
I just say then,
It's
I
good.
think as we close this segment, I just want to point out something and commend you for it, Carolyn, encourage you and everyone who's also listening, parents, or if you're a younger person listening. One of the things that I've most admired about my youngest sister, is that she's always made Jesus number one in her life. And if you look at the trajectory of her life from the very beginning, from when she came to know Jesus and the choices she made consistently, in consistency with that decision to
Conviction.
follow Jesus, all her convictions lined up and she did not waver. I know she wasn't a perfect child, but to be honest, we've always joked around that she was like the most angelic of all of us. But that's besides the point. My point being,
angel right here.
Yeah.
okay. my point being that real success, whether you home educate your kids or you don't home educate, it comes from connecting our children to Christ when they are really young, and then encouraging them to really obey God and follow him, and being that kind of family that allows them to grow in their spiritual life because they see Christ in the family. I think when I look at your life, Carolyn, I think that's the reason why God blessed you in so many areas of your life. You would definitely put in the effort. She did put in the effort, but it was really that you put God first in everything.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
On that note,
Thanks for
I'm Edric.
I'm Joy.
And we're here to help you
Get it right from the start.